Hey, yo, say hello to the bad guy. So I just got one question for you. How the hell does Scott Hall put up with these toothpicks for as long as he has? I can't even handle 1 minute of this thing. How long did he do this thing for? For years? Come on. But anyway, yes. Hello, friends and neighbors. Good evening. Happy Saturday. Happy weekend. Hope everyone is doing well. Hope everyone is staying cool and enjoying what little of summer that we have left. I personally am hanging on to it tooth and nail. We did have our second heat wave about maybe a week ago. We're over that now, but I got news for you. As hot as it gets, I am not in a hurry for summer to end because back to school is around the corner, and I'm trying to get back into back to school mode and get my kids going, but I got to be honest with you. Um, I know a lot of parents when the kids go back to school, they're like, "Yeah, yeah, all right, back to school." I'm not like that. Uh, I like summer. It's nice and chill. Um, Fall around here is nice, but I'm not in a hurry for winter to come. So I'll uh, I'll stick with summer. Thank you very much. But hope everyone out there is doing all right. Uh, just giving this a few minutes to, what do you call it? See whoever's gonna pop in is gonna pop in. We got all night. I'm not in a hurry to go through everything I got going here. So is that Mojo Jim I see? What's up, man? I guess that's why I threw most of it. That's probably is why I threw the toothpick. You couldn't handle only so much of it. But all right. Just to explain what I got going on here. A little something different from the usual fare. I've been flirting with this idea for a while. With everything going on lately in WWE, all the changes that are going on. Um, I've been a wrestling fan for quite a while, since like the mid to late '80s, the rock and wrestling era, through the '90s, the new generation, the Attitude Era. Um, Even though I stopped watching full time around the end of the '90s, um, I would still pop in, watch Raw every so often, see what was going on. If I found a news headline on the web that attracted my interest, I would click on that. So even though I wasn't watching, I was at least keeping my finger on the pulse. Um, I guess I've always been a fan. It's just been varying degrees. That's all. I haven't been watching lately, but you know, I keep my eye on things. And with all the stuff going down as of late, I flirted with the idea of doing a stream like this for a while. I just was hesitant because I didn't know how popular it would be. But eventually I figured, you know what? The hell with it. I'll do it and have fun. And if a few people pop in, then I will entertain those few people. And we'll just have a good time. I didn't have a guest list planned only because This was I wouldn't say that this was last minute, but it was a little bit of short notice. I only decided to do this a couple of days ago. And I know because it is the end of summer, we're getting near the end of summer, I should say, perish the thought. I know a lot of people are doing family time, especially on the weekends and before their kids go back to school. And, I didn't want to put anybody on the spot and tie up their Saturday night. So I figured we'll do other live streams where I have company. Um, this one's just going to be me and anybody in the chat who wants to chime in. Jim from Mojo is in. Rage, I see you. How we doing, man? Yeah, Warrior, Macho Man, and Sting. Those are three biggies. Yeah, the 80s and 90s were my favorite era. Toward the end of the 90s, when WCW was on the decline, things were getting a little outrageous in WWF. I'm not gonna lie. Some of the more edgy content was getting a little bit too outrageous, but I would still watch. But eventually I just stopped watching because I think after WCW folded, that was probably the worst thing that would happen to WWF because they had no competition. I think they got a little bit lax. And even though they had their moments, um, it didn't quite feel the same to me, or maybe it's just nostalgia, as the 80s and 90s. That was my era. 80s through the 90s. But I would pop in every so often on the news, and if I saw a headline, like I said, when TNA started, I would keep a somewhat of an eye on them to see who was showing up there. Eventually, TNA had started looking like WCW 2.0, with everybody popping in there. Um, you know, uh, now we have AEW. I don't really watch, but I keep an eye on that. Mostly WWE with the Hall of Fame, that video I did for the Hall of Fame reaction video that I did. Speaking of, before I go any further, I do have to bring up something. When I did that reaction video for people who aren't in the WWE Hall of Fame who should be, I did make a comment about Undertaker, how I felt that it was wrong that he didn't go in the Hall of Fame immediately after he retired. I did some thinking and I got to walk that criticism back. I'm wondering if they waited on purpose to induct him because he retired in 2020. The pandemic was in full swing. His last match, the Boneyard match with AJ Styles, was he couldn't have a last match in front of a crowd. The Boneyard match was fun to watch, but I mean, it was in front of a crowd. His retirement announcement at Survivor Series, they had to do that. What do they call it? The Thunderdome with video screens everywhere, like a massive Zoom call. I mean, better than nothing, I guess, but still, that should have been in an arena, sold out. It was lacking. I'm wondering if, they did the 2022 Hall of Fame in front of a full crowd, a full stadium. Undertaker came out and everybody was going crazy. Sold out crowd. He was overwhelmed. You could see it. And even better than that, when they introduced him at Mania at WrestleMania, he came out, what was it? It looked like what, 70, 80,000? Like the place was packed. And he comes out and the crowd goes crazy. I'm wondering if WWE held off on inducting him to make sure that he was going to have a crowd. You know? Rather than induct him with the video screens, have everybody there, give him what he deserved. And if they deliberately did it for that, then I gotta tip my hat to them. I really do. They did right by him, you know? And if it's just a happy accident that it worked out that way, fine. Um, but I like to think that they deliberately held off until they knew they were going to have a crowd. Because, him going to the Hall of Fame was a given. It was mandatory. So, uh, yeah, WCW did have some nice stuff. They had their moments. I preferred WWF, but WCW did have their moments during the Monday Night Wars. By the way, those of you who are watching, I just hope I tried to adjust my microphone a little bit, so I hope I'm clear enough here. I hope I'm loud enough. If I'm not, I'm sure you'll let me know in the comments. But so be that as it may, I wanted to do a stream talking about the changes that are coming down the road, that may come down the road, that have already come down the road. And I wanted to share with you some of my favorite stuff from the times that I used to watch and compare it to now. Those of you who are watching, if you're hanging out in the chat, feel free to pop in with your stuff as we go along. You know, it's a different kind of chill out stream, but it is a chill out stream all the same. I don't know where that toothpick went. I hope my dog doesn't get it. If I hear him munching, then I'll know. And I do have some notes with me, some talking points. So hopefully I'm not going to ramble meaninglessly, too much. But yeah, Vince McMahon retiring. I never thought I'd see it. That was the company that he brought up. Of course, he inherited it from his father, who inherited it from his father. So I honestly thought that, McMahon wouldn't retire at all, that he'd be like, what was his name? Casey Jones with his hand on the throttle in the train. They'd have to drag him away, kicking. Well, they'd end up burying him in the control switch, But things change, I guess. There's a lot of things that have happened in the years of wrestling we never thought we'd see. So I guess it only makes sense that McMahon retiring would be the latest. It is a bit of a shame about why he had to retire, though. I mean, because he supposed, accusations. I will say allegedly because there's nothing proven yet. But whatever millions of dollars for, hush money. Uh, if enough people are yelling smoke, I guess there's fire somewhere, which is a shame. But not only that, I've heard that there are also X amount of dollars in what do you call it? I have it written down here. Unrecorded expenses. was the blurb that I heard. So as a result, they have to go back and open the books for 2019 or 2021. Maybe some ill-reported expenses or unreported expenses. I don't know. So I guess art imitates life and the plot thickens. I don't know, which is a shame, but it's still in the family, though. We've got Stephanie McMahon. She's what, co-president or co-CEO, something like that. And of course, now we've got Triple H, aka Paul Levesque. He's now he's been returned to the head of talent relations, and now he's also the head of creative. And that, I think, is the biggest news more than anything, because for a while, I know that he was in charge of NXT, I guess it's supposed to be a developmental league. And for a while, from what I've heard through the internet, NXT was being better received than the main product, Raw and SmackDown, because Triple H was running things a little different than McMahon was. And from what I've heard, again, I'm only going by what I've heard throughout the internet. I try to keep up with stuff. But I heard that a lot of people were hoping that McMahon would one day step aside and Triple H would take over, like at least the creative stuff, I guess, because he was doing such a good job with NXT. So be careful what you wish for, I guess, because now we've got it. And one thing that I did hear that McMahon, even if it wasn't McMahon, it was the writers, they would bring up the NXT talent to the main roster, and more often than not, they get buried in the shuffle because McMahon, for better or for worse, has a type that he feels has more people as a superstar, as he calls it. People like Brock Lesnar, Roman Reigns, the big guys, and NXT focused more on the wrestling itself instead of the storylines, I guess, whereas the main product, it was more emphasis on the storylines. So that's another. There have already been changes from what I hear that Triple H has been doing now. One thing is, McMahon called them superstars and not wrestlers because he hated that term. It wasn't pro wrestling; it was sports entertainment. As he put it one time, his father was into wrestling. He is in the sports entertainment business. Well, Triple H, I guess, has lifted the ban, and now they are wrestlers. They do wrestle, which I think makes more sense. I mean, if you want to call it WWE World Wrestling Entertainment, fine, but they're wrestling. Call it what it is. I could never understand that, but just because McMahon wanted to do something different, and I also heard that he micromanaged a lot of stuff, like the commentators over the years, Jim Ross, Michael Cole's doing it now, Jerry Lawler did it for a while. Mick Foley, I remember reading somewhere that he was commentator on SmackDown for a little while and had to stop because they have their headsets on with a microphone. That way they're able to talk to each other. But what you may not know is they also have an earpiece where McMahon in the back, I don't know, maybe Triple H is doing it now, but McMahon would micromanage it and would tell them, make sure you talk about this, make sure you talk about that, and and pound it, pound it, pound it. And Mick Foley, for one, couldn't handle it anymore, so he ended up leaving the company, I think, over it and going to TNA for a little while. But something I've heard is that Triple H is backing off of that and letting the commentators do a more natural flow. Some of the reviews about SummerSlam, uh, you know, they would mention that the commentary seemed a little more natural. So that's another good thing. And, I've also heard that a lot of the cuts that the old regime, for lack of a better term, that they made, something like 2020 through 2021, there was like 100 or something people that were let go. Not just on air talent, but off air talent, like behind the scenes. They were just cutting people left and right. Supposedly because of budget issues, which, if McMahon was doing things a little shady, it's a shame if he had to cut some people to try to balance the books. Yeah, fully. That's putting it lightly, Jim. That really is. Foley was beat up to hell and back. Not even that cell match, which I'm sure we'll mention a little later, but other stuff too. Woodruff, what's up, man? Welcome in. But something else that I had heard is that Triple H is starting to hire some of these people back that will let go because he was actually removed from NXT, if you can believe it. I think what happened was NXT for a while, even when they were doing their developmental stuff, it was only available on WWE Network. And then AEW premiered and started doing their show. And they ended up putting NXT on TV against AEW. I think it was Wednesday nights they were doing it. And even though there was a lot of praise for the quality of NXT stuff, AEW was coming on top in the ratings. I wouldn't quite call it the Monday Night Wars over again because I don't think AEW is even gonna got a candle in a snowstorm's chance of beating WWE. But because of the ratings, I think what happened was McMahon panicked and pulled Triple H off, much to his chagrin, because I'm sure Hunter and McMahon had butted heads once or twice, and they did, I guess they called it NXT 2.0, and depending on your sources, I guess the quality went. So, and again, wrestlers that get called up and, again, they get buried in the main roster, but because Triple H was pulled off, he couldn't do anything about it. Well, now that he's back, I think he's trying to right some of the, I wouldn't call it the wrong, because that's a matter of opinion, but he's trying to fix what he's seen as some of the errors. Um, there was some guy who was cut. He ended up coming back. Let me find the name. Hold on. WWE rehires. Uh, I can't find the name, but rehires after SummerSlam. Yeah, I can't find the name, but some guy who got let go, um, and he came back, and I guess they're putting him in a program against Drew McIntyre, and whoever comes out on top of that is probably going to challenge Roman for his title. So I've heard that Kevin Owens is back or is coming back. I've heard that Bray Wyatt might be coming back. And they misused him. I will admit, I watch clips on YouTube. I don't watch the shows, but I watch clips on YouTube, and some of Bray Wyatt's stuff, it could have been second coming of Undertaker as far as the sinister supernatural stuff, if they had worked it right. And then The Fiend, when he came out with that, yikes in a way. That was insane. And then they had him lose to Goldberg, and I was like, what? Really? You're gonna build this guy up and then have him lose to? I mean, Goldberg was big back in the day, but I mean, he's a part timer now. If that, it was just another case of the new talent getting buried. Here come new verse, same as the second verse, same as the first. Bray could be he could. The whole Wyatt family thing. I will admit, I was intrigued by that. Because Undertaker was one of the best gimmicks, mainly because Mark Calloway made it work. I mean, you put anybody else in that gimmick and it goes away as a gobbledygooker. And if you were watching you know, in the early 90s, you know what I'm talking about. Trust me, that was, but, um, hopefully the thing is with Triple H, I think he has a better understanding as long as he's not in the spotlight. Like if he can stay off camera as much as possible and just run things behind the scenes, because I've seen clips of the Authority stuff that they were doing, and I watch a lot of clips on YouTube. I should just say the hell with it and just sign up for the network at this point. I might. I don't know. Don't tempt me, but uh, the Authority angle I think might have gone for too long, but keep Triple H off camera because he's got his health issues. I mean, he's got a pacemaker, not a pacemaker, a defibrillator. I mean, come on. You can't be wrestling with that thing in your chest. And to his credit, I watched his interview on ESPN when he mentions it. I think he knows it. So hopefully, he'll stay off. He'll stay off camera, just run it behind the scenes and let WWE be the best that he can be. Yeah, Triple H has a defibrillator. I think it was late last year. He was starting to suffer from heart failure, or something like that, and he had to have a defibrillator put in. So the last thing that he needs is to be in the middle of a match, get somebody in for the pedigree, and then all of a sudden, get shocked on camera. You know, that could be bad. So he needs to stay away, and Undertaker needs to stay away too. I know everybody wants one more match, but no, please no. I'm being selfish, but let him. He's married with kids. Um, he managed to walk away or ride away from his last match, which was better than it probably could have been. For what it wasn't bad. You know, let him work behind the scenes and help with develop the talent. You know, so yep, he does. He admitted it. So I know all the people I used to watch, they're either died or they've fallen apart. You know, but one thing that I did hear in the rumor mill, um, and those of you who are watching, I know I see there's a few of you, so let me get your opinion on this. It's a rumor mill, but possibility of maybe John Cena doing a heel turn, maybe that could be big. I don't know. Even if he comes back for a part-time run, just a limited engagement. I know that he wanted to do it years ago, but they were afraid to pull the trigger on it because I don't know if it was so much the merchandise, but it was all that Make-A-Wish stuff that he does. I think Vince McMahon was afraid of losing the maybe the money or the endorsements or the goodwill from that. So, but he wanted to do it. The thing is, though, they have to have a good angle, I think, to justify it. And I heard this comment, someone commented on a forum somewhere, it might have been a YouTube comment. And, thinking about it, it makes sense. What if, excuse me a second, I'm just checking my phone here. Okay. Thought I had a message. Sorry about that. But what if Cena's 16-time world champ? So is Ric Flair. What if Cena becomes determined to win number 17 and kind of loses himself? Like it's number like if you remember how Shawn Michaels was obsessed with beating Undertaker at WrestleMania, have Cena go through that, his obsession with number 17 to be the man, and just have him throw away all the goodwill, resort to heel tactics, whatever. Um, number 17 or bust. Have it be that kind of thing. The question is, who would he face? Because I think they've already done him versus Roman. And I don't know if there would be a market for that. I think maybe if you put the title on one of the current roster, maybe McIntyre, Drew McIntyre. Um, I've seen a little bit of his stuff. He might, I know he's won it before. So it's not like he doesn't have the goods. But just have Cena going an all or nothing quest, you know, title number 17 matches, and that's it. But that begs the question, would they have him win it? Or would they, because if he wins it, then he eclipses Flair, who's regarded by many as the GOAT. And there may be some people who do not want, there may be some people out there who really, they didn't like how Cena was booked. And I know this because I remember taking my kids to a WWE event in Providence. I think it was around 2013, maybe. It was back when the Shield were together. They were relatively new. And I will admit, other than Cena and the main event was Cena, Sheamus. I'll come back around to the point I was making before, but this is memories. That's why this is the whole point of the stream. So bear with me if I ramble and go off on tangents. But the main event of that card was Cena, Sheamus, and Ryback versus the Shield. I didn't know who the Shield was. I didn't know who Ryback was. I had heard of Sheamus. And of course, I knew who Cena was. I did not know anybody else on that card. That's how out of touch I was. With the exception of Chris Jericho versus Dolph Ziggler. Those two I knew. Jericho, I really knew. And I'll tell you, that was a fun match because before their match, they did a lot of mic work back and forth because it was a house show. And I've been to a few house shows when I was a kid. The beauty of those is when the cameras are off, they get to relax a little bit and do stuff that, you know, when they're on TV, they have to stick to somewhat of a script. But when the cameras are off, they get to relax a little bit. Because I remember one of the house shows I was at, it was Greg Valentine, the Hammer versus Hacksaw Jim Duggan. And that was back when it was King Duggan, back when he had the crown. And they did a fun bit. Hammer did a fun bit back and forth where he would try to get the crowd to cheer for him. Every time he pointed at himself, the crowd would boo. Every time he pointed at Duggan, they would cheer. And then he would point at himself. Yeah, you like me, right? No, we all booed. He would cheer at Doug, point at Doug, and we would cheer. And then he'd get all pissed. And, at one point, Valentine was, draped himself along the top, the turnbuckle, kind of like an old school Randy Orton, like, dig me. I don't know if you remember Randy Orton went through that bit. He was the greatest thing, you know. And Duggan, for his part, he jumps up in the top turnbuckle and he says crisscross applesauce and twiddles his thumbs. It was, you weren't going to see that kind of stuff on TV. So it was a fun time. So getting back to the house show that I took my kids at, Jericho and Ziggler, they had a lot of great mic work back and forth. I don't remember anybody else on the card though, to be honest. But we had fun, I will admit. But what the hell was my point? Oh yeah, the heat that Cena was getting, even back then, because of the way that he was booked, he half the crowd loved him, the other half didn't. So I don't know if he did beat the champ and win title 17, he would probably get a hell of a lot of heat, like the wrong kind of heat, because Flair is the untouchable, the GOAT, um, and people are probably peeved enough that Cena's tied with Flair. Going over Flair would really set them off. But I think a heel run from Cena, that would be like Hogan going heel, you know? Because I think Hogan had done all that he could as a fan favorite, as a face, and people were getting tired of that. And then he turned heel with the NWO and revitalized his career. So Cena going heel might breathe a little bit of life into him for a little while, you know? But that begs the question of who he beat or who he'd face. But that's not for me to decide, you know. But it'll be interesting to see what changes do come down. Now more than ever, I'm going to be keeping an eye on the news. So we'll see. And I will admit, I also wonder if some of these people who hadn't been inducted into the Hall of Fame yet, maybe they will be, because some of the names of that video I reacted to, Elizabeth, I think, should be in. Because if Macho Man is in, then she needs to be. It's very hard to think about one without the other. Jim Johnston, why he's not in the Hall of Fame is beyond me. He's the guy that did all the theme music for a lot of the wrestlers for X amount of years. He needs to be in there. So I think some of these people might end up being in, you know. Maybe they need to mend some fences, but we'll see. But like I was saying, the main eras I used to watch were from the first card I watched, first pay-per-view I watched was WrestleMania 3. Hogan and Andre. I was hooked. I watched WrestleMania 4 the following year, and then when they started coming out with the other pay-per-views, so this was around 87 through 88, and then Survivor Series 88, then the Royal Rumble the next year, I was hooked. And I just kept watching. They didn't have Monday Night Raw back then. It was Superstars on Saturday mornings, and it would be Wrestling Challenge on Sunday. And those were pretty much just squash matches and then updates on the pay-per-view card. But I watched it all. I was hooked. I watched all through the new generation era, so-called. That was around what? Mania 8, 9, 10, 11, thereabouts. And then the Attitude Era kicked off, and WCW entered the game big time. But I think back on it now, and It's interesting how one era put more emphasis on the wrestling. I think, the late 80s through mid 90s, um, as it got to the mid 90s, I think it started becoming more about the storylines because there was a lot of great wrestling action back in the day. I mean, there was an attitude era, don't get me wrong, but I think a lot of that was more about the storylines. But, you know, the Steamboat and Savage at WrestleMania 3 is still one of the best matches I've seen ever. It's too bad that match WWE on their YouTube channel, they have a lot of matches available, and unfortunately, that's not one of them. Try to find that somewhere. You know, Trust me, it is a clinic. It is a clinic. Savage had that all planned out and worked it out with Steamboat, one spot after another, and they did it seamless. It was crazy. So storylines are all right, but I like the action in the ring. The storyline should serve the action in the ring. It shouldn't be the other way around. You know, the storyline should build up to the action. The action shouldn't build to the storyline. Sting the Giant, yeah, yeah, Giant. I wasn't watching WCW when the Giant came out, but I remember some of his early stuff. And when he started out, he was doing things that guys his size you do not think that should be able to do. Like, I remember watching one WCW match. He actually did a kip up. You know how Shawn Michaels would do that thing where he was on his back and he lifts his legs up and then just kind of kicks himself up? Big Show, Giant, whatever you want to call him. Back then, when he was able to do that. I think he had to have like one hand on the bottom rope for a bit of leverage, but he could do it. And he would dive off the top turnbuckle for an elbow drop. Now, bad enough when someone like Macho Man drops their elbow on you. Jesse Ventura mentioned, I saw an interview with him where he mentioned one time he took an elbow from Savage and he realized just before Macho jumped that if he was off by a hair, Ventura was done for. So it's all about the placement, making it look worse than it was. Can you imagine if Big Show, if Giant missed and landed wrong? Whoever he was fighting, he'd be flattened. Yeah, Sting was. I have watched a little bit of Sting's early stuff back before he started using the crow gimmick. He was he was all right. He was. I can see why he was the Hogan of WCW. Yeah. Didn't he hold a title? Like, he was. WCW made him world champ for a little while, I think. Um, Maybe I don't know if they made Big Show a world champ, but didn't they make him tag champs at least once? Maybe. I think part of it with Big Show is Undertaker himself has said that when Big Show was at the top of his game, um, he could do a lot, but sometimes he got sloppy and let himself gain weight, and not just because of his gigantism, or the acromegaly or whatever it was. The same thing that Andre the Giant had, basically. But yeah, when he was on, he was on. Oh, for a quick bit. Well, one of those what could have beens, I guess. But I think it was a few years ago, though, a couple of years ago, um, maybe 2019, he had gotten himself in a workout program, and he actually had like some semblance of a six pack for abs. You know, so I guess he was able to get himself in shape. But yeah, a lot of WWF, a lot of their old wrestling matches was, and I know that they were marketing toward a family friendly thing. That's why they had Hogan and um, a lot of people were cheering for Hogan, and I know back in the day, he wasn't the one I cheered the biggest one for. Though the one I cheered for the most was Jake Roberts, Jake the Snake. That was my guy. I love Savage. I love Piper. Um, you know, I would cheer for Hogan. Don't get me wrong. I did see Hogan wrestle Savage live in Providence at a house show, and that was something. So I can legitimately say I saw Hogan wrestle and Savage and Andre for that matter. Andre was at a house show one time, and I'll tell you something. You think he was big on TV? Holy crap! Andre was big. Oh, that Money in the Bank, huh? Yeah. Yep. Hot Rod. I liked watching him. There's another guy who, you know, they made when they put the Intercontinental title on him uh, at Royal Rumble '92. You'd have thought he'd have won the world title. The crowd blew up. The crowd popped big time. So I've heard that the reason they never put the world title on him was because Piper refused to job to just about anybody. He refused to be pinned. He would not let anyone, he did not want anybody to pin him. DQ, disqualification, count out, whatever. That would be fine. He didn't have a problem losing by that. But he did not want to let anybody pin him. A little bit of an ego trip, I'll admit, but I think that might go back to the territory days when, you kind of had to protect your brand a little bit. So maybe with Piper, old habits died hard. And if they put the world title on him, how are they going to get it off? Because of WWF rules at the time, the title only changes hands with a count out, pinfall or submission. And Piper would not lose like that. But with the Intercontinental title, he ended up getting pinned by Bret Hart. He agreed to that because of the respect that he had for Bret Hart. So that was a different story. And it was a bit of a thrill seeing Piper with some title, one of the titles. But yeah, Jake was my guy. I loved the feud that he had with Ted DiBiase. You talk about a storyline that percolated. You know, they just let that thing build for I think it was as far back as it was before SummerSlam '89. Jake needed neck surgery, so they did the thing where Ted DiBiase crippled him with that $1 million dream of his, and put Jake on the shelf, and Jake got his neck surgery, and then they let the feud percolate, and the blow off, the payoff was Mania 6 in Toronto for the $1 million title. That was fun to watch. I think Jake Roberts was, without Jake, I don't think there would be a Stone Cold Steve Austin. That's what I really think of Jake. Because Jake was the anti-hero. There really was no difference between Jake as a good guy and Jake as a bad guy. The difference was who he was feuding with. You know? That was the difference. But Jake didn't raise his voice to do the promos. He was the guy. Even his theme music. Everybody at Hogan would come out to this bombastic music. Warrior would come out to the bombastic music. Jake just had something that was kind of I don't know how to describe it, but it was just very low key, under radar. You know, it was methodical. You know, but I loved watching him, and I was heartbroken when I heard how he had fallen, the drug troubles and the alcohol troubles that he was having. If you want to watch something that's emotional, and you can actually find it on YouTube because I've watched it. It's a documentary called The Resurrection of Jake the Snake. You will get teary-eyed. I guarantee you. Because it involves how Jake got involved with that DDP yoga from Diamond Dallas Page, who was somebody else I got a kick out of in WCW, I will admit. But yeah, Jake did that DDP yoga and cleaned himself up, and it kind of chronicles 18 months from when he started through his Hall of Fame induction. And it also throws in what DDP did with Scott Hall. Reza Ramon, speaking of Scott Hall. Where's that toothpick? And I'll tell you, if Jake had one foot in the grave, then Scott Hall was in the casket and just didn't have it shut yet. Because he was messed up big time. And even though he's no longer with us, I think that if nothing else, DDP gave him extra time. Otherwise, we would have been reading, a horrific obituary, and Scott Hall never would have had Hall of Fame. So, a little bit of redemption there for him too. But yeah, go look up that documentary, and do not be surprised if you get teary-eyed, because I did. I have, and I've watched it twice. Watching Jake struggle through that and watching him get himself cleaned up, it's a redemption story. It really is, and he is maybe the guy more than anybody that I hope I get to see, that I get to meet. maybe at Comic Con. Because I've already met Honky Tonk Man and Jerry Lawler last year. If Jake ever comes to one of those, I'm getting in that line. I'll tell you that right now. But speaking of, I mentioned Greg Valentine um, a little while ago, and I know I'm bouncing back and forth between topics. I've just, like I said, I've had all this stuff percolating in my head, which is why I wanted to do this. So, those of you who are watching, thank you very much, and those of you who might be tuning in after the fact, thank you for watching. I do appreciate that. But speaking of Greg Valentine, I've always thought that the way he was booked in WWF, it was almost like he was their version of Ric Flair. Correct me if you think I'm off base, but I always thought because Valentine had the blonde hair, and so did Flair. Picture this now, all right? Valentine was an old timer, so was Flair. Valentine had those sequin robes, those really snazzy numbers, and so did Flair, of course. That was his trademark. And what was Ric Flair's move? Figure figure four, right? So was Valentine's. You see the pattern here? And the other thing that I remember the way Valentine was booked. Um, they would always hype him up about how what was one line, Gorilla Monsoon? Oh, it takes him 15 minutes just to get warmed up. You know, they would build up Valentine's endurance, and of course, Ric Flair, he could go, you know, an hour, hour and a half, or whatever. His battles with Rick Steamboat were legendary. I would love to watch those. I haven't been able to find them. I'll have to check YouTube. Maybe they're on there somewhere. But they did a trio of matches. I think it was around 90, 89, 90, where the title, it would go back and forth between them. But so yeah, Greg Valentine was WWF's version of Ric Flair. That's what I think. Even though Valentine had that, what do they call it, the heartbreaker, that leg brace that he would have, he would rotate it and supposedly it put more pressure on the leg lock. But uh, and if that is the case, here's a little bit of useless trivia for you that I found out yesterday, as a matter of fact. Greg Valentine was a second generation wrestler. Okay. His father was Johnny Valentine. Um, Johnny Valentine had his career cut short when he was in a plane crash. And this was the same plane crash that Ric Flair was in. And Flair had to end up losing weight and changing his style around. Because Flair before then was like, what, 300 pounds or so. Let me, bear with me, guys. I want to see if I can bring up a photo of Ric Flair before the plane crash. Show you what I mean. See if there's an image that comes up. Yeah. All right. Wait a minute. See if I can bring this up. Okay. Let me, yeah. Thank you, Mike. I thought I wasn't off base there, but let me make sure that he's up. All right. Let me make sure I get the right picture up. I'm going to share my screen. This is a photo of Ric Flair before the plane crash. Okay. Dig that. That look like the Ric Flair that you know? There's another image of him, which I think is him. I think that's Ric Flair. This is, I know that for a fact. But that's before the crash. Okay. So, but yeah, that's just a little bit of a neat parallel that, Greg Valentine, the guy who was WWF's version of Ric Flair, his father was in the same plane crash as Ric Flair. So, speaking of Flair, I really hope he does not get back in the ring. Because from what I hear, he did his last match, I think, what was it, last month? Uh, what we got, like, yeah. You gotta love Google. You can find anything these days. But Flair had his, I guess he's insisting that it was his last match. Now. I guess he had to go out one more time, which I'm a little conflicted because I've watched his match against Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania, that career-ending match. That's something. That's a hell of an emotional match. And yeah, you know what I'm talking about, like. I didn't watch, his final match. I didn't want to watch that match because that's not the Flair that I want to remember. But he has his match against Michaels. WWE gives him an absolutely perfect send-off. Because I think at the time Flair genuinely was done. He did intend to retire. I believe that. And that's why McMahon, give him credit, pulled out all the stops and gave him a send-off for the ages. It was fantastic. But I think Flair, yeah, I'm going to get to that in a minute. Like they need to know when to stop. Part of it, I think, was money troubles, which is why Flair had to go back. Because he went back to TNA. Um, did a little bit of wrestling there, which, you know, but I think part of it is not money troubles. Part of it, Flair, yeah, that should have been it. I agree. The Michaels match should have been it. But Flair was one of those guys that lived his gimmick. I don't think he could stop being the Nature Boy. Ike brings up a good point. They need to know when to stop. And I don't think Flair could. You know? And the problem was he was living the Ric Flair lifestyle. He didn't have the Ric Flair money. Rick can't give it the spot. I don't think it's a matter of the spotlight. I just don't think that, you know, Eric Bischoff had a comment that I saw. Um, he couldn't be Richard Fleer, which is his real name. I don't know if it was Bischoff or if it was his wife, or one of his wives. He couldn't stop being Ric Flair. He couldn't be Richard Fleer. And Bischoff, it was his opinion that his now final match, hopefully it is his final match, it was Richard Fleer saying goodbye to Ric Flair. That was his theory. And I'll tell you something. I had heard that Flair was almost passed out if he wasn't passed out because of dehydration or lack of oxygen. You know, it's like that line from Rocky Balboa. I gotta go out the way I gotta go out. But no. Flair should have done something else. You know, even if he went to like managing or something, where he would be on camera and be in the not even the limelight, but be in the foreground if he had to do that. Not wrestle. I mean, come on. You gotta know when to give it up. Undertaker knew. He finally gave it up. Retirement matches are, that's the problem with calling it a retirement match because it usually isn't, you know? Although I will say, Shawn Michaels, when he had his career match against Undertaker, career versus the streak, I this may be a little bit cynical. During the build up for that, when Michaels and Bret Hart reconciled on Raw, I'll circle around to that feud in a little bit. I'll come back to that, but don't let me get off on a tangent. When Michaels and Hitman reconciled, I knew at that point that Michaels was going to lose. He was not going to be Undertaker. He was going to lose his career. And my question was not if he was going to win, but how soon before he went to TNA. That was what I wanted to know. And to Michael's credit, he didn't. He stayed away until that, what was it, that Saudi Arabia, a match he had in Saudi Arabia. It was him and Triple H versus Undertaker and Kane, which was a crap fest. I've seen a little bit of it and I don't want to watch the rest of it. So, and Michaels, I think, said at that point, I'm out completely. So, Taker might have gone one match too many. First of all, I think, give me a second. I got a lot to talk about, and if I don't keep drinking every so often, I'm going to start coughing. So, if you've seen that Hell in a Cell match, the end of an era, with Triple H and Michaels as the referee, Triple H versus Undertaker, I genuinely believe that should have been the last match for both Undertaker and Triple H. Because First of all, have an Undertaker retire with a Mania streak of 20-0. They should not have broken the streak. I'm sorry. Even if Undertaker, being old school, if he was agreeable to letting it get broken, you had a guy who stayed with the company when everybody else was jumping ship or thinking of jumping ship in the 90s. And Undertaker, the worst that he did was step away for a little bit to take a break and reinvent himself. You know, that we had the mortician to the American Badass, which I did not mind. I'll be honest. I didn't mind Biker Taker, as the nickname was. I love the Dead Man. Don't get me wrong, but I didn't mind Biker Taker either. But yes, they should have. The streak took on its own mythology. It became bigger than the title. They should have left it. If nothing else, as a way of saying thank you to Taker, let him keep that. He should have retired after the Hell in a Cell, 20-0. And not just Undertaker, but Triple H too. Because that was the climax of, you had Taker versus Michaels at Mania 25, which was incredible. From a wrestling standpoint, holy crap. You had Taker versus Michaels 2 at Mania 26, career versus streak. And the build-up for that is one of the best video packages I've ever seen. Michaels becoming obsessed with the streak, that chef's kiss. All right. You had No Holds Barred, Triple H versus Undertaker at Mania 27. And holy shit. Excuse my profanity, but that's Undertaker coming out, the Johnny Cash. Woo! That's badass. Okay. I loved that entrance. With Ain't No Grave playing, you know, one man in black, Johnny Cash, the man in black, calling out the other man in black, Undertaker. Come on. That was awesome. And even with Undertaker not being able to walk away, there was a little bit of drama there. So you circle around to the end of the quadrilogy. Taker versus Triple H in the Cell, back when Hell in the Cell was the end all be all of a feud. You know, I don't really think they should have made Hell in a Cell a pay-per-view. Rather just have it be like you know, the real Thunderdome. 2 men enter, 1 man walks out. You know, the other one gets carried out. That end of an era match, from the build-up, the action in the ring, and the storytelling in the ring, because you could hear Triple H yelling at Michaels as the ref to try to get Undertaker to give up. Otherwise, he was going to escalate it. And you could hear Undertaker telling Michaels, no, don't do it. Michaels super kicks Undertaker. Taker gets in the pedigree, kicks out by the merest of fractions, and then it is on. And all the while, Michaels is having a breakdown in the corner as watching his best friend and one of, if not the person he respects the most, killing each other. And then the end of that match, when all 3 of them walk up to the back, it doesn't get better than that. It does not. It was like the curtain call 2.0. If you remember the curtain call back in 96 when Nash and Hall were leaving, And their last match, it was Nash, Hall, Michaels, and Hunter in the cage, embracing. Someone recorded it, and McMahon flipped his lid. It was Curtain Call 2.0, and rather than try to, because it breaks kayfabe, and rather than um, hide it or shy away from it, they've embraced it. You go on any WWE highlight package and you will see that. So I genuinely believe that that should have been Undertaker's last match and Triple H's. It was not going to get any better than that. And I know Triple H maybe had a few more matches in him, but by that point he had already married Stephanie and was starting to become a thing behind the scenes. They should have. It wasn't going to get. It was not going to get better than that. Taker definitely should have retired at that point, but you know, it is what it is. But yeah, I agree with he might have gone one or two too many. The Boneyard match, though, I will admit, for what it was, what they had to do, I'm talking about his match with AJ Styles at WrestleMania 2020. For what it was entertaining. So, and Undertaker has said that you know, he was able to walk away with his head high at that. He felt he was in a good place, I guess. And the beauty of him retiring is if you go on YouTube and you look up all these shoot interviews that Undertaker does, it's fantastic stuff to listen to. Because now, Taker's just a nickname, it's not a character. Undertaker is just Mark Calloway's nickname now. He can be Mark Calloway. And I don't know if you've seen a photo of him at the Hall of Fame and that suit that he was wearing with the ponytail in the back. Retirement's agreed with him. So I hope he stays retired. But Ric Flair, yeah. One too many. He should have stayed away. If he had to be on camera, if he had to be in the limelight, let it be a manager position. I think his daughter, Charlotte, that might be her ring name. Let him be in her corner. Don't let him get in the ring. Although I will say that it's a good thing it was a tag match at least, rather than a one-on-one. Because a one-on-one would have killed him, I think. With a tag match, at least he could have hung out in the corner. And the other thing I'm kind of glad out is that Jeff Jarrett was one of his opponents. Because Jarrett is old school. Jarrett was not about to take liberties with Flair. So, but let it be done. But let him have a good legacy instead of, we'll try not to focus on that last match as much as possible. Speaking of the Hitman and Shawn Michaels, though, the screw job, the Montreal screw job, I remember watching that with my brother. We had ordered the pay-per-view. We didn't know what we were looking at when that went down. You talk about confusion. And we flipped on Raw the next night, like, what is going on? There are still a few people that think that was a work, that was a storyline. And I can kind of understand why, because this is going way back now, but Andy Kaufman, who was like an old, the '70s comedian, he dabbled into wrestling. He was the intergender champion. He called himself. Instead of fighting other guys, he would fight women, and heel tactics. He would humiliate them. This was back before WWF was WWF, when it was all territories. Um, and he got in that feud with Jerry Lawler, and at one point they were on Letterman, and Lawler just hauled off and smacked uh, Kaufman, and Kaufman just flipped his lid. I'm going to sue you. I'm going to sue Letterman. Bah, 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 bah. Everybody thought it was the real deal until Lawler himself revealed, around the time that they were doing Jim Carrey was doing the Man in the Moon, the Kaufman movie. Lawler's in it because they referenced that. That was around the time that Lawler admitted that the whole thing was an angle. It was a storyline. It was all a storyline. It was all, you know, it wasn't a shoot. It was an angle. And for decades, it fooled everybody into thinking it was for real. And because of that, I think that's the reason why a lot of people think the screw job is a work. Because Lawler and Kaufman pulled off the con that well. I don't think it was fake, though. I don't know. Well, I will say, though, that WCW, they misused Hitman big time. That's all tragedy, what happened with the Hart family. Because after Hitman leaves, you've got Bulldog, British Bulldog, his brother-in-law, goes to WCW, gets himself injured, gets fired, hooked on painkillers, and that leads to his death. Oh, and Hart's death. That was insane. I didn't watch that pay-per-view, but I remember hearing about it the next day. That was a tragedy that didn't have to happen. But, it's heartbreaking, no pun intended, what happens to some of these people. But Hitman did deserve better, but I was glad to see that he reconciled with Michaels, because the two of them have had such fantastic careers. It shouldn't have been defined by that one night. It really shouldn't have. I don't think. Even though it was a black mark on the careers, it shouldn't be the main focus. So, but as much as I think the wrestling was better in the 80s WWF, through the mid 90s, the Attitude Era did have some great stuff. I loved Austin. How can you not like Austin? The Rock. He was another classic to watch. That was just good times. Flipping back and forth between WCW and WWF, not knowing who was going to do what. The thing with WCW, I can remember matches in WWF that I loved watching. With WCW, I don't really remember matches so much as I remember moments. Yeah, that when both companies, it was kind of a second golden age is a good way to put it. Like, you know, if both companies trying to outdo each other, and if you were just a wrestling fan in general, it was good times. But I don't remember matches in WCW, believe it or not. I just remember moments. And I remember when Bischoff got power bombed through the stage. I remember when Kevin Nash picked up Rey Mysterio and threw him head first against a bus like he was a lawn dart. That was big, you know? All you hear is like, oh, wrestling is fake. You're right. Here I am watching a guy getting head planted in a double decker bus. Um, I remember Arn Anderson's retirement speech in WCW. I remember when the Horsemen were reformed. Flair had been suspended for a while and he came back, and that was in Charlotte, which was Flair's hometown. Um, Crowd was hot for that. I remember Diamond Dallas Page fooling Hall and Nash into thinking he was going to go with them. And then Nash has a back turn, and DDP gives Hall the diamond cutter and then throws Nash out of the ring and then runs off in the crowd. He's flashing his self high five. That was a wild moment because up until then, I don't think nobody had really gotten the jig on NWO yet. But there was another, speaking of Dallas Page, I remember another wild moment when he was in a feud with Macho Man. This is when Macho Man was part of NWO. That was an idea that got run into the ground. I'll come back to that. But Macho Man was fighting La Parka, who was one of the luchadors. And this is when he was feuding with, Macho Man was feuding with DDP. He's fighting La Parka. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, La Parka hits Savage with a diamond cutter and then rips the mask off, and it's actually DDP. Everybody was going crazy. I mean, I was going nuts. You know, things like that I get a kick out of. Um, but there are two matches that stand out for me during that whole run. Um, One of them was Diamond Dallas Page versus Goldberg for the title. It was at Halloween Havoc 98. Um, the reason that match stands out for me is because DDP looked great. And sorry, I thought I felt a sneeze coming on. I was getting ready to mute it. That way you wouldn't hear me sneezing in the mic. Sorry about that. But there was one spot where Goldberg threw Page into the corner and comes barreling in. Page comes out of the way, and Goldberg smashes his shoulder into the ring post. And the reason that was big was because shortly after that, Goldberg tries to get Page up in for the jackhammer and can't do it. And everybody started going crazy because, you know, you thought at that point that Goldberg was vulnerable, that he wasn't as unstoppable as he looked. You know, Page actually looked like that he could have beaten Goldberg. So that was a fun moment. But I think my favorite match from the time that I watched WCW was Goldberg versus Hogan for the title. For two main reasons. It wasn't so much the action. The action, the back and forth was about average. Other than the ending of the match, and I'll get to that in a moment. The back and forth was pretty standard. The crowd, however, was hot. And a hot crowd can make a match even better, I think. A good example of that is Hogan versus Warrior at WrestleMania 6. Because the crowd was on fire for that one, and that match, as a result, I think lived up to the hype. But so the crowd's on fire for Goldberg versus Hogan. And the other reason that that is my favorite is because of Bobby Heenan on the commentary. I'm tempted to. I don't know if I can get away with bringing the clip up and sharing it for you guys, but I'll probably get flagged. With my luck, I'll get flagged or taken off the air. But oh, you didn't know. Your ass better call somebody. I remember that one too. But if you queue up that match, I'm not going to do it because I don't want to get flagged or canceled. From the time that Kurt Hennig comes down, you think he's going to interfere. DDP comes down with Karl Malone because they were going to enter a future program. And from the time that Karl Malone from the NBA hits Kurt Hennig with a diamond cutter, Bobby Heenan goes nuts. He summoned, I could only call it, he summoned his inner Jim Ross. And he just goes off with one of the best calls I've ever heard. You know what? Yeah. All right, I'm going to cue it up. If I get in trouble, I get in trouble, whatever. Bear with me a minute. I can't, talking about it does not do it justice. Okay. So give me a minute. Let me. All right, hang on. I'm going to fast forward to just before Hennig comes out. Okay. Give me 1 minute. Hang on. All right, I'm going to bring it up. Because I can't, talking about it doesn't do it justice. And I think if I just limit it to that minute or whatever, I'm not going to get booted. If I do get booted, thank you for watching. But bear with me here. Share audio, yes. Select the tab preview. Hang on. Hold on, people. Ay, 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 ay. Hopefully I'm still on the air here. Wait a minute. All right. Well, now Chrome's not responding. Come on. Well, all right. It looks like I'm still on the air at least. So, but yeah, it basically Bobby Heenan just goes crazy with a fantastic call. Uh, if my screen ever unfreezes, I'll cue it up to you guys. But so basically, that's it. It's just those two matches that were my favorites. I didn't get the boot. Okay. Glad to hear that at least. As my web browser is not responding, so I don't think I'd be able to highlight your comments for some reason. Oh no, I broke it. All right. Well, but as far as favorite matches in WWF, the Iron Man match that Michaels and um, Hart had at WrestleMania, that was pretty cool to watch. Um, Austin versus Michaels at Mania 14, that was pretty cool. Um, the Hell in the Cell with Mick Foley and Undertaker, that was vicious. That really was. And what blows my mind is Foley has said that that was the one time that he was ever knocked out and that he doesn't remember, or that he didn't remember parts of it. He had to go back and watch clips of it. Um, this is the same guy that did the King of the Death match in Japan. He would wrestle exploding rings, C4. He had that I Quit match with The Rock, all those unprotected chair shots. And just all of that damage that he went through. And for him to say that he was knocked senseless from the cage match, you know it had to be bad. You know that had to be bad. So I'm glad that he stayed retired. You know what I mean? I know he would come back every now and then for like one-offs, but even eventually he stopped that. But his match against The Rock for the world title, I don't know if you remember seeing that. That, of course, it was January '99 was when they broadcast that, and that was when, of course, Nitro gave away the results, and you know, oh, that'll put butts in the seats, and then what was it, 500,000, 600,000 people turned the dial to watch it, you know. And I remember watching that match and fully, I mean, Austin comes out, the glass breaks, and the crowd goes completely bonkers. And excuse me, the reason they go bonkers is because I believe, anyway, they knew Foley was going to win it at that point. They knew. So if you ever have, I know for a fact that that match is on YouTube. So if you ever get the chance, just look up Foley wins WWE title, and that'll come up. Like 5,000 different options of it'll come up. And when Austin comes out, the crowd loses it, and they pop even harder when Foley lands the 3 count. And the funny thing is, Foley even knew that he wasn't going to hang on to the title that long. For him, it was more of a lifetime achievement thing. But hey, they gave it to him at least, That's more than some other people got. But that's another guy that I wouldn't mind meeting, you know? But looking at my notes here. Hang on. Not all of it was near the end of the Attitude Era, right around the time of when WCW started fading out. I was starting to watch WWF less and less, and I had heard about some of the things that they did that I'm kind of glad that I missed. The Katie Vick story, for one thing. Basically, it was Kane as a necrophiliac. Like, really? Come on. That was, what was that? Vince Russo came up with that, I think. And Beaver Cleavage was another one. Um, they were starting to lean a little too heavy on the adult themes and instead of the action. And I don't remember. I didn't watch those. I don't want to watch those. So, you know, but one thing that WWF did do that I thought was boring was that Brawl for All, the shoot boxing. That was just dull. Those of you who don't remember, it was basically um, like a boxing competition between the wrestlers, but it was shoot fighting. It was boxing, and from what I've read, the whole gist of it was to give Steve Williams, Doctor Death, build him up as a tough guy. But it didn't work because Billy Gunn ended up winning it. Not Billy Gunn. I'm sorry, Bart Gunn ended up winning it. And in the process, Steve Williams got injured. So what was the whole point of Brawl for All was just the waste. Anytime that come on, I just went to, all right, snack time, but so it wasn't all a bed of roses. But as far as the most shocking moment, um, I mean, I could say Owen Hart's death. That was a shocker. But I think what was even more of a shocker for me was me personally. Um, when I heard WCW actually went out of business, I couldn't believe that. I didn't think it was possible. You know, I did not think it was going to happen. Sorry, I thought I had another notification, but um, I mean, how does a company go belly up? You know, I mean, if you ever want a good behind the scenes view, find this book called The Death of WCW, and that kind of lays it out. You know, from start to finish, how WCW was on top and how they blew through everything. Um, and I think in a way that might have been the worst thing. I missed the natural growth. Well, yeah, okay. The natural girls were not bad. I think DDP's wife was one of them, wasn't she? At one point, what was her name? Kimberly. So kept the crowd going, I guess. But I will admit that I did watch the last episode, part of it anyway, of Nitro when McMahon showed up on WCW TV. Cue the flying pigs, hell froze over, McMahon's on WCW television. Stuff you never thought you'd see. WCW was flames. You know what? For a while they were. They were. Like I've said, there was a time when it was hard. You were flipping back and forth between Raw and Nitro. Um, like Woodruff said, it was a second golden age. It was fun times if you were a fan. When Kevin, I'm reading your comments. For some reason, I can't highlight them because you know my browser isn't responding, even though I'm still broadcasting. Thankfully, apparently, when Kevin Nash broke the Giants' neck. Yeah, I remember that power bomb. I think the only thing that saved the Giant was how big it was. You know, otherwise that would have been a lot worse. But Kevin Nash going for that power bomb in the first place. That was either incredibly brazen or incredibly stupid. I don't know. But when Goldberg hit the Giant with the jackknife, that was something I didn't think I'd see. And he had the Giant up there for a good, at least 1 or 2 seconds. He held him up. It wasn't a matter of pick up and drop, you know? He kind of held it there a little bit for the effect. So Goldberg was fun to watch. I remember one match when it wasn't La Parka, I think it was Psychosis. It was after Goldberg won the title. And whoever it was had a steel chair in the ring and wasn't throwing it out. And Goldberg was doing his usual, yeah, come on, hit me. And Psychosis actually brains Goldberg in the head, overhead, on the head with the chair, just smacking the crown of the head. And Goldberg no-sells it. The crowd's going crazy. The commentators are laughing. And Goldberg just does his usual, human chick, whatever. And I don't know, it was something. Little moments like that. I do kind of miss WCW, stuff like that. But speaking of moments, I also remember Austin versus McMahon. Tell me that was not a hot feud. That was a soap opera that you wanted to tune in every week. Jim and I watched the PPV with Owen Hart. Oh, I'll come back to Austin McMahon in a minute, but yeah, I can't imagine what it must have been like in the crowd to watch Owen Hart fall. And I had heard Jim Cornette has mentioned that when Owen fell, he was yelling at everybody to get out of the way. Before he hit. And that, well, for one thing, it says a lot about Owen that the last thought that he had was getting everybody, get out of the way, get out of the way. But how high was he up that while he was falling, he had enough time to tell people to move? I cannot even imagine being there. I can't imagine seeing that. I've watched the replay of Jim Ross announcing Owen Hart's death, and Jerry Lawler just looks completely stone-faced. And of course, the tribute show the next night, that was just same thing with Eddie Guerrero after he died. The tribute show after that, when everybody comes out and they do the 10-bell salute. And then there's Chris Benoit's death. That's a hand grenade. The shame about Benoit, it was crazy. I didn't know what that was. My buddy was like, that was a blue meanie. Yeah. Blue blazer. It was a blue blazer, not the blue meanie. Blue meanie was somebody else. But blue blazer actually goes back to the 80s. Owen Hart came in then, believe it or not. So That was a callback. But that was it. You were close. You were close. You had the right color anyway, Brian. You had the right color. But Benoit, you know, it's hard to separate what he did in the ring versus how he died. Um, I know WWE has tried to erase him from everything. They don't want to mention him. They want nothing to do with it, which is a shame because the man was talented. Um, you know, and I've heard that when they did the autopsy on him, his brain physically resembled that of an end stage Alzheimer's patient, like a 70, 80-year-old Alzheimer's patient. And that's a quote from the medical journal. That's not exaggerating. So, too many diving headbutts, too many chair shots, um, which is why WWE, they don't allow chair shots anymore, at least to the head, if at all. So, hopefully we won't get anything like that again, you know. But what was my original point? um, we go from Owen to Guerrero to Benoit. Oh yeah, I started talking about Austin McMahon. Um, I told you at the beginning of this, my head is full of stuff. That's why I wanted to do this. But Austin McMahon was a full blown soap opera. You know, um, you had to watch every week to see where it was going to go. And it is a shame what happened with Austin when he had his neck broken because, speaking of Owen, which although that was accidental, it was a bonehead move, I think, by Owen Hart because what he basically did was he set Austin up for the tombstone, but instead of dropping to his knees, he went to sit down, and as a result, Austin's head was exposed. So that's why he went crunch on the mat. And it took years off of his career. He had to change his whole style of wrestling because he was a bit of a technical wrestler. You know, Nugget screwed Austin. What? Oh yeah, I remember the Nugget chant. Nugget, Nugget. That that was nasty. But I don't think it was deliberate. It was a bonehead move, but it wasn't deliberate. And the reason I say it was bonehead was because Owen was not a newbie. That was a rookie mistake. And Owen wasn't a rookie. So he should have known better. But it was accidental. I don't think he meant to deliberately injure Austin. But for what we did get out of Austin, at least we got what we got. Although I will say, I've watched him lately doing his podcasts with different wrestlers. Um, he does not look like he is aged. Seriously. I don't know if it's because he's bald or because um or what it is, but his mustache doesn't look like it has gray in it. He does not look like he has aged that much. Which I mean, good for him, you know? But it would have been great if we had a few more years out of him than what we did have. But that's somebody else I wouldn't mind meeting. I'll bet he's got some more stories, you know? Um, trying to remember if there's any other angles or wrestlers from those long days gone by. I have seen Kevin Nash wrestle at a house show back when he was Diesel. Um, and Undertaker. So yes, I can say I watched Undertaker at a house show. Not taking any more chair shots as wonders for your health. Yeah, I'll bet. I'll bet. Thrilling to watch, but you know, when the payment comes due, it's a bitch. It really is. That's why I'm surprised that Mick Foley's able to walk. You know, I mentioned it earlier, that I Quit match that he had against The Rock. I can't even watch it. I've only seen that match once, and I cannot watch it again. Those chair shots are incredibly brutal. But speaking of books, if you want to read a good book, pick up Have a Nice Day, which is Foley's autobiography. It pulls back the curtain and talks about from when he started getting trained, his first matches in the business, all the way up through when he won the title in '99. And I'm telling you, it covers everything. He doesn't hold anything back. And he's got his own style. It's a way with words, but I recommend it. But yeah, no, I cannot watch that I Quit match. Seriously, it's too rough for me. Look at my notes here. Yeah, there was even the days leading up before the Attitude Era. You know, I enjoyed that back then as well. You know, I've already mentioned Jake Roberts. Piper was fun to watch. And to be honest, in the 80s, I'm talking like from WrestleMania, even going back to the original WrestleMania, all the way up through 6 or 7 was when it started slacking off. But the tag team division, WWE had a hell of a tag team division back then. you talk about golden age. You had Demolition, which started off as a Road Warriors knockoff, but they eventually became their own thing. Um, Heart Foundation, yeah, the British Bulldogs, Strike Force, uh, which was Tito Santana and Rick Martel, the the Rougeau brothers, the Dream Team, which was Brutus Beefcake and Greg Valentine, uh, Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard ended up coming in. They were the Brainbusters. Um, you know, you had the Rockers back when Shawn Michaels was teamed up with Marginetti. Seriously, the tag team division back then, it was fun to watch. It really was. Uh, you know, and I don't know if WWE is doing tag teams that much these days. You know, of course, I don't watch. That might be why I don't know. But I will admit I'm a little nostalgic for those days. But speaking of the Brainbusters, Bobby the Brain Heenan, I mentioned him before with the Goldberg match. If you want to see him at his best, at the 1992 Royal Rumble, go check that out because it is literally his finest hour on commentary. That was back when Ric Flair came in and won the title. And of course, Bobby Heenan was biased as hell because he wasn't Ric Flair's manager. He was Ric Flair's executive consultant or something like that. Hanging Woodruff, hanging on to the gold was hella difficult then. Yeah, it was at one point. But yeah, Heenan, it was an absolute evil irony what happened to him with his throat cancer. One of the greatest talkers of all time, all of a sudden now he can't talk. I remember when he died, I saw a photo of him, or I stumbled onto a photo of him and how he looked, and I wish to God that I hadn't because it was heartbreaking, you know? So I would rather remember Heenan back when he could talk and back when he was healthy. The stuff that he did with Gorilla Monsoon was, it was hilarious. You know, Heenan would keep on going off, you know, well, you got to be fair to Flair because Flair was there, you know? If you're not fair to Flair because Flair was, and of course Gorilla would yell, "Will you stop?" You know, they. I found out afterwards that they were actually the best of friends, which watching some of the antics they got into, um, in hindsight, it's 2020. You know, they paired off with each other well, and I remember Bobby Heenan's last time in WWE. He was thrown out of Monday Night Raw, and it was Gorilla Monsoon that did it. And it was actually Heenan's idea because his contract wasn't renewed. He was going to go to WCW and have symbolically have Gorilla have the last word by throwing Heenan out. So, but, you know, the fact that they were best of friends, it's, that kind of adds a different spin to everything. And Speaking of commentators, Gorilla Monsoon and Jesse Ventura were great to listen to back in the day. I know Ventura would comment a lot with McMahon during like the old Saturday Night's Main Event when they would butt heads, because it wasn't established unless you were in the know. The casual fan didn't know that McMahon was the head of the thing. At least I don't think they did. I didn't. So I didn't know that technically McMahon was Ventura's boss. But listening to the two of them go at it verbally, McMahon was always, for the baby face and Ventura was always for the heel. That was the fact that McMahon was Ventura's employer. Them button heads that just had a different spin. I always thought that Ventura would enjoy being commentating with Gorilla more, though, because Ventura, former wrestler, and so was Monsoon. I thought they paired up nice. So, I got fond memories of all the pay-per-view cards between. I think it was WrestleMania 3 through. Sometime in 1990. WrestleMania 6, I think, was the last time that they were paired up. So, and then Ventura ended up leaving the WCW for a time. But good commentators can make or break a match. Jim Ross, of course, has some of the classic ones. You watch his Hall of Fame induction promo. His match, calling the match of the Hell in the Cell when Foley gets thrown off the top. As God is my witness, he is broken in half. That was. He's good to listen to. His autobiography is a bit of an interesting read too. Because that talks about how Jim Ross, how he started off in the territories and then in the WCW and in the WWF, and he's had a bit of a hard knock life. It's a slobber knocker, yes, Brian. Yep, you know it. Steve Austin is stomping him like a government mule. Hellfire and Brimstone, yep. Speaking of that, there's another moment. Thank you, Brian, for the jumpstart in my memory. You guys remember when Kane debuted? When it was 98, I think, was when Kane debuted. Jim Ross always produced a real slobber knocker. Yeah. But I remember them building up. It might have been 97, I think. When they were building up Undertaker's brother, and Paul Bearer came out, and they would talk about it, and they would hype it up, and they would let it percolate. He was supposed to be Undertaker's brother's half brother. And all you could think of was, who's Undertaker's brother? And then that first Hell in a Cell match again with Undertaker and Shawn Michaels, which was great in its own right. But all of a sudden the lights go out and the red lights come on, and here comes Paul Bearer with this absolute monster of a man. And Vince McMahon's like, oh, that's gotta be Kane. We didn't watching at home, you didn't even need McMahon to sell that. Because once you saw Paul Bearer, you knew who it was. That's when Kane had the red black mask. Yeah. Jim Cornette mentioned, I guess he had come up with part of the idea, and his idea was Michael Myers, a Michael Myers type wrestler who wouldn't talk, who would just come out, destroy everything, and then walk back. And it worked. Those of you who are watching, if you remember back then, it worked. It really worked. Um, and I will never forget that image of Kane getting in the ring and literally looking Undertaker in the eyes, eye level, and Undertaker actually looking like uh, complete disbelief at what he was looking at. It was one of the most awesome debuts ever that I've ever seen. It really was. Now, how they had Kane booked on a book, storyline on and off over the years, your mileage may vary, but um, although I kind of like Kane unmasked when he was bald and he had the one eye off color. He had some moments there. Um, he would have this real sweet move where to go out of the ring, he would have his back to the ropes and he would just lean back. And of course, because the guy's so big, he would somersault over, flip backwards over the top rope, and he would miss the outside of the ring. He would just land on the floor. But it was so graceful the way that he did it. It was right up there with Undertaker doing a swan dive over the top rope. Big men like that are not supposed to move like that. You know? It's like giant, Big Show coming off the top rope or um, Vader doing a moonsault or Bam Bam Bigelow doing a moonsault. Guys are not supposed to move like that. Whenever Kane showed up, someone was going to catch a beat down. Yeah, that's how they booked him, and that was genius booking, I think. Instead of putting him in the match with Undertaker right away, they let it percolate. That's what the term that I use. Kane would come out and Paul Bearer would be like, you don't want to face your brother. We're going to destroy the Federation. And yeah, some of the supernatural stuff, it might have been a little bit hokey, but they made it work. They made it work. I mean, Kane, look at how long Kane's been around. Before that, the guy, Glenn Jacobs, he was, what was that dentist, Isaac Yankem, you know. So, I mean, it took a little while for Glenn Jacobs to find the gimmick, but once he found Kane, he stayed with it. And I'm glad he's in the Hall of Fame, too. Who was it that Shane McMahon kept fighting? Ah, oh, the Brood. Kane wasn't as far as the Brood. I'll get to the Brood in a minute. Um, who did Shane keep fighting? I know he fought Undertaker at one point. I think he fought Kane. I don't know. Shane's had a bunch of matches. I do remember. I think it was against. I want to say it was Steve Blackman, who was this UFC type guy. when Shane did that first fall, I don't know how high up that was, but I know Shane McMahon did fight Kurt Angle at one point, and really got wrecked at that point. Do you remember the first time Taker and Kane teamed up? The Brothers of Destruction. Yeah, yep. It was always fun watching them. I remember. So I remember one. Here's a little bit of memory lane for you. There was this group of lightweights uh, called Kai and Tai. There was a bunch of Japanese wrestlers, and there was this one spot where Undertaker was trying to show Kane how to do the last ride powerbomb, which looks devastating as hell. But, you know, so Undertaker grabs the guy and plants him, does the last ride powerbomb. I think he grabs somebody else and tells Kane to do it. And Kane gets him in position. And when he picks the guy up, flips him over his head. And the guy goes crashing backwards into the mat. And Undertaker comes back out. No, 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 do it like this. And he picks him up and then yeah, Taker teaching Kane the last ride. Yes. Yep. I'd like to be on the receiving end of that. Hope the guy got paid enough. You know? I mean, bad enough you're gonna get dropped on your head. Now you're gonna get dropped on your face. Seriously. But the Brood that Brian mentioned, yes. Who's the name of the vampire guy? Gangrel or something like that. I know Edge and Christian were in it. Before Edge and Christian got a little bit goofy doing that 5-second photography. Yeah, Gangrel. Gangrel, yeah. Who had a genuine vampire gimmick elsewhere, and they brought it in. That was a badass entrance. With that ring of fire that would come around, and then they would raise up, and the music would hit. That was pretty cool. Isaac, you can never get paid enough. No, you can't. You can never get paid enough, right? So you would hope for double pay. Yeah. I think Gangrel's doing his own podcast now or something like that. And of course Edge is back. I know that. I saw the video when him came out. You talk about a pop when a crowd hit. That was like one of the last big things before COVID shut everything down. So, good thing Edge had that. But who else in the Attitude Era? He's wrestling. Gangrel's doing local stuff. Okay, well, I mean, if he's still in the business, like we've mentioned in the past, it's hard to get out of the business, I guess. Once you're in it, you give your life up to it. So, but I remember what was it, Nation of Domination, which was WWF stands for New World Order. And then you had the biker gang and then the Latino gang come out, and that got a little crazy after a while. But Nation of Domination did give us the metamorphosis from Rocky Maivia to The Rock. Because I remember when Rocky Maivia debuted, he got the wrong kind of heat because they were pushing him too fast. Um, you know, they pushed him too fast and they turned him into the Rock, and the rest is history. I gave Jim a scorpion death drop. What? Seriously? Jim, more power to you, man. I would not want to take one of those drops. I'm sorry I can't highlight your comments, guys. My browser's acting funny, but you know, I can still read you at least. So now I know for my next stream, don't share my screen because apparently Google Chrome doesn't like that anymore. But I'm trying to picture Brian giving Jim a scorpion death drop. Was that the backyard wrestling? Is that what it was? So all starts somewhere, I guess. But but that was another thing about those eras. The wrestler themes. You know, this might be the final point I touch on, but it was on my list. I mentioned Jim Johnson. Uh, are you guys commenting? I don't know. You had. Hang on 1 second, guys. Okay. Brian used to wrestle late night in a theater with some friends. So, like, for whatever reason, I'm not seeing comments over here, but I'm seeing comments over here. So, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. Isaac, you DDT both your little brothers. Jake the Snake style. Yeah, Jake had the best DDT. That's all right. Let me talk about this a little bit. Moves that were finishers back in the day. Jim, I see your comment about the dream match. I'll come back to that. But back in the day, when Jake hit somebody with a DDT, bam, that was it. Match over. Okay. Um, Undertaker hit somebody with a tombstone, bam, that was it. One thing I always hated near the end of Undertaker's career was how it seemed to be that it would take more than one tombstone to put the guy down. And I didn't like that. You know? Like, have it be Taker try to get the guy in the tombstone and the guy wiggle out. That's fine. But then have him finally hit the tombstone for the end, and that'll be it. Let the finishing move be a finishing move. And nowadays, everybody and their brother does a DDT, and it's not even a setup move. Whereas Jake Roberts did it, boom, lights out, done. You know? Let the finishers be the finishers. I think that goes back to I had read this somewhere when Austin and Rock had their match at WrestleMania 15. Uh, Rock proposed kicking out of the stunner, and vice versa. He would, Austin would kick out of the rock bottom, and it was a great spot. It had the crowd hyped up. Um, Although now that I think about it, it goes back a little further. Hogan would kick out of, Macho Man's elbow. I remember the career match uh, at WrestleMania 7 between Warrior and Macho Man. Macho Man hit Warrior with 5 elbows, and Warrior got up. But I think the difference then is Hogan was like, Superman, and Warrior wasn't that far behind him. But so it was only like maybe certain people who could kick out of the finishers. But nowadays, it seems like, for a while, at least with Undertaker, I've watched his matches. It seems like everybody kicks out of the tombstone, at least initially. Kind of ruins the mystique, you know? A guy jumped off a 9-foot ladder and broke his arm. It was intense. Oh, Brian used to wrestle late night in a theater with some friends. Okay. Broke his arm off a 9-foot ladder. Wow. That I wouldn't be able to do that. I would always imagine it back in the day, but I couldn't do that. I don't like pain. you know, but Jim is asking, what would be your dream match? Don't know if you discussed that. Sorry, I cut out to work on Mando. Jim, you got Mando armor going on? Hmm. You better be showing that off on your channel. Speaking of channels, before I get to that, Mojo, Brian and Jim, congratulations on 500. Seriously. All right. My hat is off to you. Who else is at 500? Blue Mama's at over 500. So you guys are getting there, man. That grind is paying off. The grind is paying off. All right. Dream match. Uh, I know a lot of people say Undertaker versus Sting. Um, Maybe an Undertaker when he was more in his prime. Or at least shortly after he came back as the dead man. Like around WrestleMania 20. Because back then he still had a lot left in the tank. Would you? If you think you broke 100 subs? Hang on. I'm going to check this right now. I'll come back to the dream match. Don't worry about it. Yeah, you're at 143. Dude, Bravo, man. Bravo. Oh, Papa's Axe in the house. All right, so Zach, just to get you caught up, my Google Chrome is acting up. So even though I'm broadcasting, I cannot interact with comments. So I have my stream open here. I am reading comments there. So you guys comment, I will see it. Hey yo, yeah, right. But yeah, Ike 143, man. There you go. Keep going, guys. All right. Speaking of the grind, Zach, I noticed you're about maybe 150 away from 2,000 subs. Keep it going, man. Those coffee hours, those pay off. All right. Dream match. If you guys have one, pop it in the comments. But trying to think here. How about the Hulk Hogan from the 80s versus John Cena from his in his prime? Because I know he's older now. But think about it. You would basically have Superman fighting himself. Zach's out here styling and profiling. Yep. Woo! Uh, Speaking of Ric Flair, maybe Ric Flair versus Greg Valentine. We were talking about Valentine earlier. That might have been a good match back in the day. Um, but yeah, maybe in his prime Hogan versus in his prime John Cena. Superman versus Captain America. That would have been wild. Um, See, I don't know a lot of the roster from WWE these days. So I'm only going from what I know. Who wins? Good question. Oof. I'd probably give the edge to Cena. Only because besides the fact that Cena's strong, he's also got a little more endurance. Because how long was that match that he had with Brock Lesnar? Where Lesnar was just suplex city, just smashing Cena around. There's another possible dream match: Brock Lesnar against Hogan. A heel Lesnar, the Beast, against Hogan in his prime. How about that? That might have been wild. Zach, I know absolutely nothing about wrestling. All you need to know is watch and have fun. That's pretty much it. Who wins, Carter or his anger issues? Well, that depends. Is Carter a Sith Lord or no? Does he give in to his anger? We always come around to Star Wars, don't we? It always cycles around to Star Wars. Um, Triple H in his prime versus Goldberg in his prime. Ooh, Ike. Ooh. Could Goldberg go for that long? Because he was pretty much squash matches. Triple H though could bang for a while. I know he did at least one Iron Man match, an hour long with The Rock. So I have to give it to Triple H there. Of course, I just realized I'm talking about these matches like they're actual matches and not stage plays. So you can tell I'm a fan, right? Hogan was an American hero at the height of his prime, so I go Hogan over Cena. Yeah, it might depend on who's the heel and who's the face. Because Cena started out as a heel, but then again, he wasn't John Cena then either. So, but I know we've already had Undertaker versus Bray Wyatt. Speak of the Mamba, he shall appear. Carter, what's up, man? Glad to have you in here. Who wins? Hacksaw Jim Duggan versus Brutus the Barber Beefcake versus Ted DiBiase versus Honky Tonk Man. Ooh, Brian, you mean a four-way match or a tag team match? There's a bit of memory lane because I don't know if you guys remember my Comic Con video. I had met Honky Tonk Man. I didn't get a chance to talk to him for a while, but he was one of the guys that you just loved to boo. And I'll tell you, he had that Intercontinental title with him. I never thought the strap was going to be that heavy. He put it on my shoulder, and I went, bleh. Like, holy moly, you carry this around? Ted DiBiase, he was another, he had that laugh, which I'm not even going to try to do because I'll blow my vocal cords out. Well, DiBiase, he could wrestle. He had, you remember that fist drop that DiBiase would do? He would just kind of angle and drop it down. It's hard to show on camera, but that was that fist drop he would do was a work of art. All right, so four-way. Duggan versus Beefcake versus DiBiase, Honky Tonk. Well, it's funny because Hacksaw, we got a brawler. Beefcake and DiBiase, we've got sleepers, and Honky Tonk, we got a neck breaker. I'm thinking. Maybe if it came down to wrestling, it might be DiBiase might outfox everybody. Although Beefcake, it was a tragedy what happened to him. That parasailing accident that he had, because he was in the middle of a hell of a push. He was going to beat Kurt Hennig, Mr. Perfect, for the title, the Intercontinental title, and then the parasailer smashed into his face, and he had to have like what 9 plates to put his face back together. So I would want to see Beef. To answer your question, Brian, I would want to see Beefcake win that match, but DiBiase might outfox everybody, and you know, Zach, who wins, Benji or Jesse? Both are covered in Vaseline. Brian, are they at Waffle House? Yeah, I know, right? Woodruff, I'm thinking Zach wins because he's the oil boy. Ugh. Yeah, Beefcake was another guy I enjoyed watching. That barber gimmick, I know it was might have been a goofball gimmick, but it was fun to watch. It was back then. And of course, Duggan, I mentioned before, I saw Jim Duggan at a house show. He was able to work the crowd. So I call Mojo Jim Beefcake. You guys. Well, I don't know. Benji versus Jesse. I might have to give it to Benji on that. Benji's not exact. Benji doesn't strike me as a lightweight. You know. Okay. Here's a match for you. Benji with, well, it might be getting a little bit extreme, but Benji with his throwing axe, and then you got Lando with his headboard. Lando using his headboard as a weapon. What do you think? Jean-Claude Van Damme Prime or Wesley Snipes Prime? Ooh. Um, hmm. Maybe Van Damme. Maybe. Although Snipes had some moves. Van Damme. Bam Bam. Oh, here's a match for you. Brock Lesnar versus Bam Bam Bigelow. When Bigelow was in his prime. Because Bigelow's whole thing was the beast from the East. Because he was from New Jersey. And of course, Lesnar, you know, isn't exactly a slouch. Vin Diesel's family versus his cars. Nothing beats family. Man, we gotta go back to those memes again. Come on, I thought we were past that. That's what I'm calling Zach from now. Oh man. But yeah, those are some other grudge matches. But now all this wrestling talk, I'm tempted to order WWE Network now so I can watch all this past stuff. But All right. Well, I have gone through all of my notes. It is coming up on 11 o'clock almost. Brian versus, oh, here we go. Brian versus Sony in a pillow fight during the sleepover. Oh, oh, gauntlet. Zach is throwing down the gauntlet with Jake Gin and Tonic as a special referee, maybe. You guys are too much. Oh man. All right. Well, it's coming up on 11 o'clock. I was hoping to get at least a couple of hours. Uh, Spoiler alert, I won. Because Brian's got the mojo, right? You gotta have mojo. I was hoping to get 2 hours out of the stream. I did not know what kind of reception it was going to get, but I figured I would do it and have fun. Um, we've gone about 3. Don't do it, John. Go for a 24 stream. Oh, don't. A 24-hour stream? Seriously? I'd have to have a lot of people in the chat and all that to, you know, although I don't know. Cody did that marathon 12-hour stream last May the 4th. I'd be tempted. I don't know. I'd have to take the day out of work though. Only crazy people do that. Well, I never said I was normal. Trust me, Brian. Don't tempt me, man. But like I said at the beginning of this, I wasn't sure what kind of reception I was going to get. Have Zach on for coffee. I don't drink coffee. Right. Brian don't like us anymore. Brian, I love everyone here. No, we know. We know you're better than that, man. That's pure vodka in my That explains a lot. I enjoy watching those coffee vids, Zach. I gotta say, that's a hell of an idea you've had. Don't give up on that. I know I watch. I don't know. I know there's quite a few people I'm sure that watch. I don't know what kind of reception you're getting, but don't don't give those up. All right. You mentioned you were going to do a second season. Please do. But at any rate, I think I'm going to call it here. We just hit the 3-hour mark officially. So I'd like to keep these things a certain length. Like I said, I've gone through all my notes and I just don't want to ramble meaninglessly. So I like to keep them at a certain length. Future stream, I will plan in advance and have guests on. I want to do. Actually, you know what? I can give you a channel update. I can give you that. Uh, so I'm sure you guys have seen, I've got my transformer now. Soundwave came in. Um, I do have a few sabers outstanding. I've got one from Revan Sabers that'll hopefully be shipping out soon. They've been in touch with me. It is in the works. They just got to add the LEDs. I have two outstanding from Saberforge. One that will hopefully be shipping in a few weeks. The other I've got to wait a little longer on. I'm not going to say what they are. You're going to wait and find out. Ha 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 ha. Deal with it. But I'm still in the saber biz. I might search eBay more to see what I can find for other stuff because you never know. So, and there will be another live stream down the road. Trust me. I want to do that James Bond stream at some point. Um, so we'll see when that goes down. But keep an eye out on Instagram. I always do channel updates there. And that will about do it. So, those of you who have hung out with me in the chat, I thank you very much. Technical snafu set aside. I was at least able to read your comments. I have a project that I want to bring you in on, you and Zach, two others. Drop me a line, man. Drop me a line, Brian. When you get it going, you know how to find me. All right. But the big question now is whether or not I'm going to be able to shut the stream down properly. So we'll see. I think if I try closing out Google and getting back in, maybe then it'll restore and I'll be able to see everything. But all right. So before I do that, I'm going to say my goodbyes now. People in the chat, thank you for hanging out. Those of you who are watching this after the fact, I hope you enjoyed it. And I will see you in the next stream in the next video. As always, please, everybody, be good, be well, be safe, be happy. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. Enjoy the rest of your week. And we'll see if... So I'm in stereo. Oh, God. All right. Hey, I can see your comments now. All right. Well, sorry about the snafus, but you guys are troopers. You hung out with me, so I appreciate that. And now I will properly end the broadcast. All right. Take care, everybody. Have a good night.